Okay, here we go. And we're going to make sure that. Hello, coffee lovers. JR with Third Day Coffee Seguin. And it's Friday. It's 1900 or 7 p.m. for those of you not familiar with the military time. And it is time for God Country Coffee. And tonight we have an incredible guest. First time I ever did a live interview was with this gentleman. He's my brother in Christ. He's my brother in uniform. Um, and he's somewhat of a mentor. I watched him. I've listened to a ton of his um, podcasts. I love the way he interviews people. He does real talk about real issues that people are dealing with, and that's what he's just so authentic, and that's what I love about it. Um, and so Richard Kaufman is my guest tonight. He's the master uh, interviewer, and I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing him tonight. So, a couple of things on the very bottom, you'll see Richard's. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Richard's website. You'll also see my website underneath my name, thirddaycoffeeseguin.com. Please hit us up. We just roasted 40 pounds of coffee today. And we've got orders going out. We got a little bit behind because the trailer was stuck in mud from last Sunday when it rained. I think I got 3.5 inches here, and so we are kicking. And so if you are watching this cast, I've already seen somebody that's hit me up. Um, if you haven't given StreamYard permission, then hey Oscar, how you doing? I have to look at both screens. And Joshua, how you doing, brother? Both of y'all, welcome to the show. I'm gonna bring Richard on here, and we're gonna light the fires, so to speak, on this popsicle stand. Hello, Richard.
How are you, brother? How's everything?
Doing great, brother. I'm so excited about having you on tonight. Um, I got really interested in learning about getting my story out. Um, with Justin Charpentier and his group and stuff like that. And then I got invited to be on your show, and it just kind of changes. It got the wheels clicking, and I started saying, man, I need to do something more to get our mission out. And fortunately, you and I have the same mission in two different avenues, but we basically are out for the same thing. We're out to help people, and and that's all a God thing. It has nothing to do with me. Uh, so again, if you're watching and our volume is good, just drop something in the comments so that we know. Um, and then if you have any questions, I'll try to stay up with the comments. Again, if you haven't given StreamYard your permission, I'll still see your comment. I just won't know who it's coming from. And so I've got two screens up. The other screen is actually Facebook, so I can try to stay on top of that, but I can't promise. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to let my brother introduce himself, and then we're going to get into whatever it is we're going to get into tonight. So, Richard, would tell us a little bit about you. Tell us where you were born and raised, and what branch of service,
Okay.
and what led you to joining the military.
My name is Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach, and you are way too kind. And I'm just grateful that for our friendship. You make coffee, I drink coffee. What a perfect relationship. Um, I grew up in New Jersey. Very, very troubled youth. Was an alcoholic by the age of 13. Uh, Joined the military. It was either go to the military or go to jail because I had no nothing going on in my life. So I was walking by a recruiting station and I seen they had these tapes and videos of tanks jumping over ravines, and I was like, I'd like to do that. So I walked in, I signed up with I guess back then it was called a delayed entry program. And I signed up when I was 17 and I shipped when I was 18. And I was in for 2.5 years the first time until Uncle Sam decided he didn't want me as a nephew anymore and booted me out for being a drug addict and an alcoholic.
That's that's pretty intense, for a very short period of time. and I've heard of stories of people that it was either the military or other things that were not attractive at all. But I think the first time you and I spoke is probably the first time I've actually spoken to somebody who had to make that choice. You know, I mean, like literally, you knew that if you didn't go to the military, you were going to jail.
Well, unfortunately, when I joined the military, I did both. I joined the military and went into a military jail for a little while too. So I kind of ended up there, but not as bad as I could have ended up.
Well, at least you were safe in that jail, you know, somewhat.
Yep. So.
Before we go any further, I want to make a note. If you notice that both Richard and myself have very unique baseball hats on today, they have a patch, and his says the comeback coach, and mine says pray. And these are both made by Southpaw Laser Concepts. The website for that is, I'll put it up in the comments in a minute. It's getsouthpaw.com. And that's our good friend and our brother and our Texas brother, JD Tierney. I was actually on a call with him this morning. He makes incredible hats. I gave him all kinds of leadway to make my hat, and this is what he came up with. And I've had so many people ask me about it, and I've actually had to get some more from him, you know, to hand out as gifts. Let me, while we're thinking about that, I'm going to put his thing in the thing, and then let's talk about some stuff. Let's see, getsouthpaw.com. Okay. All right. So Richard, let's talk about, I know you did a lot of, how much time did you do in the military total?
Well, like I said, I did 2.5 years and then got booted out. Joined back again, but this time I joined the National Guard. Almost got booted out a second time. Yes, I said twice. But God intervened on the morning of 9/11 and set me straight. So I did a total of, between National Guard time and regular Army time, about 23, 24 years.
So, anybody who, I know people, there's a lot of people that don't know you that are on my group, but you basically struggled with drugs and alcohol for many years.
Yeah.
Almost lost your life. People almost came after you and killed you. All kinds of craziness. Got kicked out of the military. Got back in. Got out. Got back in. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that it was pretty rough for you. You were pretty much running from God for a long time.
Well, I'm not a big Grant Cardone guy, but I bought a book of his a couple years ago called 10X. And the only thing I got out of the book really was that once you start owning up to everything is your fault and you stop blaming others, is when you start really becoming free. So whatever happened to me in the past, I was all at fault, no matter what the situation was. And I take, complete ownership of that. But eventually, God will humble you eventually. And he really humbled me on the morning of September 11th, 2001.
So I want to really get into that because I think that's really important with our mission and what we want. And I always try to start this show with thanking God for everything he's done in my business. If I didn't put God way out in front of my business, Third Day Coffee Seguin would not exist right now. And it certainly wouldn't be, expanding the way it is. That is all God. All the people that have come into my life, that is all God. I didn't do that on my own. So I always first and foremost give God all the glory. On that note, at what point in your life, at what point from the time you became an alcoholic at 13 until 9/11, was there a point in there where you, for me personally, I came to a point where I realized that I had no hope. I had zero hope of trying to fix things on my own, trying to do things on my own. And at that moment, that's when I realized the only hope I had was to fully surrender to Christ. So did you have a moment like that where you had to realize I got to give it all to him?
Uh, well, I got to be honest. I mean, the first time I ever thought about God, I was like 8 years old. Now, where we live by, some of you guys know as the Giant Stadium. And years ago, there was a big Jimmy Swaggart event, and my parents took me there. So that was the first time I really, you know, thought about God. Um, and then we moved down south for a little while. We went to church a lot. So, God was always in the back of my thoughts. I've always I think I've always had a relationship with him, but it's, they say that if you don't feel close to God, you're the one that moved, because he's always there. So, you know, so I think it was, I mean, one time when I was in the military and I got busted and I had like 45 days extra duty, 45 days restriction. It was a field grade Article 15. I started really getting into reading the Bible and praying and listening to Christian music. But as soon as those 45 days ended, I went back into being a heathen again. So, you know, I mean, being totally honest with you. But I think it wasn't until the morning of 9/11 that I really started thinking, all right, God, there is a God, and I'm not him. So, but I haven't really started really getting back to Christ probably for the last, maybe the last year and a half. I've been starting to, um, once my father, I think once my father got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, I think that's what I started thinking about, life, eternity, and stuff like that. So it's been probably about a year. I've been really thinking about it, and really saying, Lord, just come back into my life and teach me the way what you want me to be. And I know I fail him on a daily or sometimes an hourly basis, but I'm still trying, and I know that I'm forgiven.
Oh yeah, that's all of us, brother. I mean, I fail him just what sometimes it seems like continually. It just feels like there's some days where, I start out every morning with gratitude. I give him thanks, and I thank him for everything he's doing in my life, and I'm grateful for that. But then something happens, and I lose my temper or whatever, or and then like a couple, and then I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, God. I know I can do this. I don't need to be acting stupid. And then like a couple hours later, I'll lose my tongue, and I'm like, man, what is wrong with me? And so, but Paul talks about that in Romans. He talks about the nature
Mm.
uh, of two people, and he's talking about why do I do the things that I hate and not do the things that I know I should be doing? And
But I
and
think a lot of it is kind of like that old saying, that there's two wolves, one on each shoulder, and the one that's going to take over is the one you feed the most.
ooh, yeah,
So it's kind of like you really have to be cognizant of, what you watch, what you read, who you're around, the negativity. So, it's a lot of different things that you have to really start thinking about. Because if you notice, like a lot of times, like me, if I used to listen to a lot of hip hop and rap music. Once you start getting into the car, you start listening to it. You start thinking, maybe it's not right for me to be listening to this right now.
especially while you're driving.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in New Jersey. Well, I don't have that problem anymore since I can't drive because I'm blind, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't get all, I used to listen to a lot of Nickelback and stuff when I was running and all that. And that kind of music kind of gets you all wired up and wanting to hit somebody, and then while you're driving a 4,000 pound vehicle, it doesn't help anything. So,
Yeah.
but I had a friend of mine one time, it was hilarious. We were talking about this thing, and we were talking about road rage and all that. And she's like, wait, Jesus is in the car with me? Nobody told me that. She was joking, but it's pretty funny when you think about it that
Yeah.
way. Um, so you did your deal with the military, um, and I one other thing I just want to talk to you about. When my dad passed away in 2016, that's pretty much when I realized that I really hadn't surrendered my life to Christ. I was still living for JR, and that's when I realized that I needed something way more than I could ever provide. And so I can totally relate. To I ran all my life. I'm gonna turn 50 next month, and it wasn't until 2016, um, that I completely realized, wow, man, you're a mess, and there's not but one person on the entire universe that can help you. And so, just take comfort in that, man. God, it's never too late. And everybody listening, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what you've done in your life. It is never too late to ask God to come into your heart and just to rescue you. Uh, so let's talk a little bit about what you're doing today, because I think you have just such a huge platform and a huge mission, man. Let's talk about what you're doing today.
What I'm doing today, besides hanging out with the legend, JR, is just trying to provide hope to people and to let people know that, that if this guy can make it, anybody can make it. And just trying to get into people's ears that you don't have to be the same person tonight before you go to bed as the same person that woke up this morning. You can make the decision to change as you're listening to this. That's why my thing is today I decide. Because once you make a decision, all you have to do is execute after that. And the hardest part is making the decision. So if you don't want to be an alcoholic, you don't have to be an alcoholic. If you don't want to be an abuser, you don't have to be an abuser. If you don't, if you want to be a great husband, you have that chance to be a great husband. All you got to do is make that decision and then just execute. Execution is not that hard. It's just making a decision and making the plan. It's kind of like when they dropped the bomb on Nagasaki. The hardest thing that the president struggled with was making that decision. So the hardest part, I think, of anything is making a decision, and then if you make a decision, all you just have to do is execute it. Find people that you respect and have them mentor you, and you can change anything you want to change. You don't have to be the same person tonight before you go to bed as the same person you woke up as.
That's incredible. That's really, really sound advice. But you know what helps, Richard, is people like you that are there to not just somebody makes a decision and you're there to help them. You're there every day if you need to be, as a lot of us are, right? We're all in this to help each other. I always hate the thing which says, "Well, I don't want a handout." Well, I'm not giving you a handout. I'm giving you a hand up.
Yeah.
And regardless of what that pertains to, whether it's you need writ or you need somebody to talk to, we're all out there to give each other a hand up because that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, like I had a guy, a friend of mine called me last night feeling down in the dumps. What does it cost to sit on the phone with somebody for a half hour? And a lot of 80% of the time, people just need somebody to listen to them, not to solve their problems, not to tell them what to do, but sometimes they just need somebody to listen to them. And that's where I come in. That's what I'm best at, is, being able to just listen and let the person open up. And a lot of times they'll, like when I talk to people, especially on podcasts or whatever, we'll get deep. Like I go real deep. Um, I consider myself the veteran Oprah. I like to go deep, but but a lot of people will answer their own questions. If you just listen long enough, they'll answer their own question.
That's you know what? I'm not ever gonna forget that. You're like the veteran Oprah. I am never gonna forget that. And that may follow you for a while. But you know what? It really, I've listened to a lot of your shows. And I encourage people, if you're watching this, you can see Richard's website here floating across the bottom. Man, listen to some of his stuff. Sometimes it's just good to know that you're not the only person struggling with whatever it is you're struggling with. Sometimes just to know that because I know sometimes it's easy to get in our own little world and say, "Wow, man, nobody's dealing with what I'm dealing with." But I think you've proven the fact that somebody's dealing with something close to what they may not be the exact circumstances, but
Well,
maybe something that's similar.
well, like for instance, like we have a friend, and I already talked to him about this, and so he's okay with me putting it out there because it's on the podcast. It's out there in the world already. But this gentleman, Paul Akins, is a brother of ours. Um, the first time ever he ever talked about to anybody was on the podcast, and he was sexually abused by a priest from like the ages of 9 to 18. But since he came on the podcast, now he's go out and he's starting to help people that are struggling with the same thing because he had the courage to come out and say that he was abused. Now he wants to help others that are abused. So that's the beautiful thing about people that were, abused in one way or another. A lot of us are willing to tell our story to help other people, let them know that, you're not the only one.
Absolutely, that's so important. And I don't have a lot of experience with this. Dave Jocelyn just introduced me to some sites. I'm going to take some training. I'm going to try to get that assist certification, that training for suicide intervention. And he's done that, and he said the same. Sometimes it's just letting them know that they're not alone, uh, and that's a God thing too. We're supposed to let people know that we've got their back, even if we don't know them, because that's God's plan, right? We're supposed to treat each other with love and respect, and if you do a Bible study like I did, I was taking a lot of seminary classes for a very long time, and man, you have to go out of your way to live outside of what God wants us to live. And how many of us do it, right? We go way out of our way to do that. So let's get back on point here. Who was probably the most influential person in you starting to do what you're doing now? Was there like a person that helped you out, or did you just see the need and jump on it?
Well, the way this all started, the whole comeback coach thing started um, when they were because I got ran over. I don't know if you and if your listeners don't realize that if you can see me, I can't see you because I'm blind. Um, but when I got ran over by the Humvee and I lost my vision, it took me about a year and a half for them to transition me out. I think they call it like a warrior transition unit or something nowadays. But we would go down for drill on the weekends, and instead of everybody, always playing checkers or chess or cards, whatever, I would bring books, and I started studying about social media, and I kept hearing this guy named Gary V, Gary V, Gary V. So one day um, me and my family, we were going to, I think, Atlantic City for the weekend, and he was having a book signing at his father's liquor store. So we went. I met Gary V, talked to him for a couple minutes, gave him my hat, which is still hanging up in his office, and that's when I, started thinking, maybe I should start a podcast. Maybe I should help. A good way to help other people out, if even if I don't have any money to do it, but at least this way it might start to help others. And that's when the book came about, and that's when the comeback coach started, and when the whole, going on podcasts, having a podcast, doing all that stuff started about almost 2 years ago, I'd say.
That's pretty awesome because I've read one of Gary V's books, and I it just kind of captivated me. He's just and don't take offense to this, but he's like a wiry New Yorker.
Yeah.
He just
And the one book, if anybody's going to ever pick up a book by Gary Vee, I like the ones it's a little bit less known. It's called the thank you economy. And what I got out of it was, if I promote my friends 10 times more than I promote myself, I will never have to promote myself. So that's why if you see me, I'm always promoting other businesses. I'm always promoting other vets, and it's never about me. And in some ways, people start promoting me without me even promoting them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. There's like an 80 rule to that, right? Like if you promote other people 80%,
Yeah.
uh, you know, and then the other part of whatever, I think only 10% is of you promoting yourself. The rest of it is supposed to be, other things, and then promoting other businesses. And it comes back to you, man, 1,000 times
Yeah.
over. And I've seen it firsthand. You have too.
And, that's something that Robert Garcia, the warrior strategist, he's always talking about. He's always harping on, that the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a great. I mean, it works. It's legitimate.
Yeah.
Um,
As long
so
as long as you're being real, as long as you're not being that fake guy that's doing it just so you get your name out there.
right, yeah, and JD and I don't talk that much, but I plug his company every single time that I get a chance to. I was coming out of Tractor Supply the other day picking up feed, um, and this guy was sitting in one of those zero turn mowers, and I don't know why it struck me, but I'm like, well, I guess that's a good a lawn chair as any. And he started laughing. And I noticed his hat. He had a hat that had a patch on it. And I was like, hey, where'd you get that hat? And he's like, oh, well, this lady in Oklahoma makes them. And I'm like, well, are you a vet? And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, I know a vet in Corpus that makes them. He goes, really? And then he got up and came over and we started talking. We ended up, at the back of my truck for 45 minutes, just shooting the breeze. And I gave him JD's information, and he's, well, I'd like to get my hats done by him instead. And so but that's also like, it's a biblical principle, man. I mean, it's not supposed to be about you, you
Yeah,
know.
I agree 100%. It's never, and I tell everybody, like when I come on a podcast, or if I have somebody on the podcast, it's never about me. It's always about the audience, and it's always about you. It's never about me.
Absolutely. So let's dig into the military side a little bit deeper here. Let's talk about the Ryan Hunt, who is the Pando Commando. Um, he's a really,
That's
really
the shirt. So this is Ryan Hunt that I'm wearing. So
nice. I've got his hat too. His hat says "We the People," and I wear that one a lot. He put together the Veterans Summit Social, which happened a few months ago. Incredible event, super value. Towards the end, he was just giving tickets away for anybody who wanted to watch. And so now, and it was ironic, and I hadn't discussed this with you guys yet, but you remember the guy, and we have a group, right? A messenger group that you started, Success, and I don't remember. All I see is Success all the time. So, but there was
our sponsors group for the podcast.
right, and so one day there was somebody in there. Hey, have you guys seen this guy? He said he's going to harm himself or whatever. He was in distress, and so I looked at the guy's page. I reached out to him. I know other people did. We got a plan of action together. We got somebody that drove by the guy's house. Everybody kind of pulled the resources together, and we moved on it quickly. And then eventually the guy ended up sending me a personal message, and I spoke to him for a little while. I turned it over to Carrie, because Carrie Murray Beavers with Soldier Girl Coffee, soon to be.
Yep.
She does this quite a bit, and she works with outfits that help, that they can move on somebody's house. They can go do a health and welfare immediately, in different areas. And so I turned it over to her, but the guy responded to me in the morning, and so I spoke to him a little bit, and I didn't know, I've never done that before. I do know the scripture a little bit, and so what I told him is, man, you're never alone. Obviously, because I've reached out to you, other people in the group have reached out to you, so I know for a fact that you're not alone. And then I quoted him Joshua 1:9, which is uh, Joshua. It says, "Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee wherever thou goes." I said, and what that means is even when your friends and your family turn on you, or they ignore you, or they belittle your issues, your problems, whatever you're dealing with, there is one inexhaustible resource that will never, ever, ever not be there for you, and that's God. And so, but that whole event, that situation made me realize, and Doc Jocelyn talks about it, the 22 push up thing is great. But what are you doing on day 23? What are you doing on day 24? And so Ryan Hunt and you and other people in the group, um, I told Doc that night that I wanted to do a roundtable because he's very knowledgeable in this field. And he's like, yeah. And I said, okay, well, let me figure out how to do it. And then the next day, we were talking about it in the sponsors group about doing the veteran healthcare. And I've actually contacted Doc and put him in touch with Ryan because I think Dave Doc Jocelyn's got an incredible experience and background to
Well,
help.
how that all came up, I did a video on my life story, and of course you've seen it, so you know what was in it. And I had to, because I'm visually impaired, I had to put it on YouTube and then send it to Ryan. Well, when I put it on YouTube, all of a sudden it went viral, and then I had people saying, maybe you should put together a mental health summit. And that's when I put it into the group. I'm like, why don't we just do it? And that's when it all became today I decide mental health summit. And now it's just blowing up. We got like 12 speakers and sponsors. It's really doing things that I would have never thought that was going to happen.
So let's talk about that a little more because that's really important for people listening, especially, and not just so much people who are struggling, but people who want to. In my discussion with Doc Jocelyn, the most important thing he told me was just because you bring up suicide, if you ask somebody, hey, are you thinking about harming yourself? You're not going to put the idea into their head. They've either already thought about it or they're not thinking about it. It's not an option for them. Or but you're not going to make the situation worse if they're reaching out already. Now, granted, I'm going to take the courses because I want to know, what's the best thing to say and how do you really diffuse those situations. But talk to me about what this is all going to involve and what our impact's going to be on our brethren and our sisters.
Well, initially it started out just being a mental health summit. And then me and Ryan and Annette and Tammy, you guys, and if you guys don't know them, you need to know Annette, Tammy, Ryan. You need to know these people. Because Tammy, she helps people that are dealing with hoarding issues. Annette, she helps deal with all kind of mental health issues, military sexual trauma, all that stuff. And we started talking about mental health summit, and then I put the idea out there, if your mind ain't right, your body's not right, and your soul's probably not right. So if one is off, it throws the other two off. So we just put our heads together, and we're going to have three different things, four people talking about three different things. It's going to be the mind, the body, and then the soul. So it's going to be a way to encompass the whole person. And then I started to think, because I'm going to be the one that's closing. I'm the closing speaker, and I've been doing a lot of studying lately because I want to know what I'm talking about. And I came upon a fact that I read yesterday morning that worldwide somebody commits suicide every 5 minutes, and 20% of suicides are from children between the ages of 8 and 19. So that's what I figured. It, we're going to invite people, and it doesn't have to be them that are struggling. If any of their kids are struggling or anybody in their family is struggling, they can come to this event, and it's free. Nobody's charging anything, and it's virtual, so they can't say I can't make it. And so this way, if anybody, they may not be struggling with it themselves, but if their kids are struggling with depression or anything, they can watch this summit and maybe even have the kids in there watching the summit with them to, just to start conversations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, that's incredible. I didn't know those statistics, man. That's wow, that's some great research. And I never would have thought that children that young were dealing, I mean, you hear some cases sometimes, but
Well, actually, suicide for adolescents is up during this whole COVID-19 thing. So it's actually peaking very high because of depression and being inbound and not having their friends and stuff like that, and also getting bullied. So we're going to talk about bullying also.
yeah, that's real. I mean, it's as real as it gets. So I want to take a second here and just I'm going to plug Brian Stacy. He's my coach. He's my trainer right now. I'm on a program. If you watched last week's podcast or video podcast, episode 6, he owns Tricon Fitness, and he does Garage Talk on YouTube. If you look up Tricon Fitness, he's got this thing called Garage Talk. And one of the things that he talked about that just resonated with me is the fact that, if your body is not where it should be, in a roundabout way, you're stealing from God, because this is a temple that God gave us. And so you either take care of it or you don't. And I have abused mine horribly for many, many years. And I got healthy 6 or 7 years ago. I was training for a triathlon. I was down to 228. I was wearing pants in a smaller size than I wore when I was a senior in high school. And then when, I don't blame this all on Dad, leaving this world, because God called him, but it's all me, right? I made a choice to stop doing what I was doing. And anyway, Coach Stacy, last week I agreed to go on this program of his. It's 23 days. And then, and he guaranteed, he's pretty certain I'm going to lose at least 20 pounds. He thinks in my situation, it may be more. And I'm sticking to it. But when you said that about, you really have to factor everything in. It's not just your mind and your heart, because if your body is suffering, it can make the rest of your life miserable. And I know you know pain probably more than anybody, having half your body crushed. But I don't have that, but I do have issues. I have both. I've had surgery on one knee. My other knee's bone on bone. My back hurts a lot because I'm too fat. And, funny side note, my dad used to cuss all the time. Every other word was the F word. He cussed incessantly. I mean, he would make a sailor blush. And he used to tell me that if I got any fatter, that my F and rear end wasn't going to fit through the GD door. And he meant it, And so I think that may have been part of the reason why originally, 7, 8 years ago when I started working out, that was part of it. But Dad was my biggest cheerleader. He was my biggest supporter. He was my hero. And so when he left, I kind of took it, I don't know if I got mad for a little while. Maybe I did. I don't know. But I just, a lot of things happened and I just quit taking care of myself. But, yeah, it's weird that you say that, man, because we do got to take care of all of us. We can't just take care of our mind and our heart. We do got to take care of our body. And I know that some of the research has shown that with depression, and especially like, Doc talks about the lockdown and the country talking about another lockdown, those our veterans and people in general who suffer with depression, they're spiking right now with depression because you've taken the one thing that they can do, associate with other people, get out, and you've taken it away from them. And so,
But also, I got to put out there, because I yelled at my mother the other day because she had COVID and she's better now, but she's afraid to go out and she's isolating. But I told her, I said, Ma, if you have a smartphone, there is no reason for you to be isolated at all. You can reach out, you can talk to people from all over this globe. So if you feel isolated, that's your fault.
yeah, you're
So,
right.
you
Yeah, if
know,
there's a will, there's a way.
exactly. And, it's what I tell everybody, I hear people, they can't get a good education. They can't learn anything. Listen, if you got a smartphone and you can watch YouTube, you can learn anything you want in this world just by watching YouTube. So your excuses are null and void.
I uh I use YouTube a lot, man. I really do. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a pretty decent mechanic. I've worked with my hands all my life. I'm a pretty decent welder, and a little bit of a fabricator, and so I can get through most situations. But man, I tell you what, when I get frustrated with stuff, boop, YouTube. Let
Yeah.
me see how to do this. Oh, okay. Here's what I'm doing wrong. Yeah, you're right. You can definitely. And like you were talking about reaching out to people, my daughter lives in New Zealand, and it's killing my wife not to go to New Zealand because she goes every year to see the babies, and she's going on. But excuse me, by the time she gets there, it's going to be probably 3 years before she's seen the baby, and so he's not a baby anymore. He's 5, 6 years old, and so uh, there you can reach out to people. There is definitely, and there's always somebody willing to talk. So you're never alone, people, ever. Um, Real quick before I forget, earlier today I did a live out in the trailer when I was roasting, and one of the guys in the group, Jeff Hayden, I talked about the COVID, how you can't fear so much that you don't do anything, that you just shelter yourself in a little box and hide, because that's just not realistic. And uh and so but you do have to be careful. I understand. It's like, I tell people all the time, God, if God wills it for me to die from COVID, I could live in a NASA built bubble where nothing gets in and nothing gets out, and I'm still going to get COVID and die from it. If that's how God wants me to go, that's how I'm going to go, period. By the same token, he gives me free will. And that's why I don't, play football with myself in the middle of the highway, because I'm going to get run over. That's not God's will. That's my free will. And so, just like with the COVID, I don't go running around licking doorknobs and handrails because I don't want to get it.
Yeah.
So there is some part of free will that we have to be aware of. But anyway, earlier today I was talking about that in my go live, and I was just talking about praying for people who have gotten it, because it is definitely real. My wife, she's an epidemiologist. She's a superhero in my book. Um, she does such a great service to this state and to the county. Uh, Trying to fight this and flatten this curve as best as she can with her knowledge. And anyway, one of our brothers here, he ended up in the ER anyway, urgent care last night. His name is Jeff Hayden. And I want you guys to pray for him, keep him in your prayers, because he is dealing with this. It's real. People are dying from this. It was 1 in 1,000 people dying from it, but now it's even that ratio is even smaller. It's less than 1,000 people now. It's probably like 1 in 800. And so that's just going to continue, until we get to a point where it's not novel anymore, and everybody gets vaccinated and it helps. And I don't care what people have. They want to argue about all that stuff. That's their business. The military gives us 1,000 vaccinations. Why? Because they know historically that they work. And so before we go to different countries, everybody gets different rounds of vaccinations for that particular reason. But we're not going to get into that. I don't have a say one way or the other. Just do whatever your conscience tells you to do. Pray about it. Pray about it. So if somebody wants to be on your show, let's say, let's talk about that for a little bit. what's off limits, what's not off limits. How do you select people to be on your show, and what do you talk about?
I have never turned anybody down that wants to be on the show. Put it that way. As long as they got a good story to tell. You know, I love to have different people on. Like last night, I had a gentleman. His name is Tommy Walker, and he lives in the mountains of New Zealand. I mean, not I mean Australia,
Oh,
Austria. What the hell am I thinking? I don't even know what I'm. He was in another country, and he just wanted to talk about his new book that came out about changing your mindset. So pretty much, I've had authors on, athletes, veterans. I'm going to be having a clinical psychologist come on. I have anybody that wants to come on that has a good story to tell. As long as they know that we're going to go deep, and no matter who comes on, we're getting deep. So I warn them ahead of time. I'm like, if you're not ready, don't even come on.
but that's what makes your show unique, Richard, is that you do go deep. And
Well, it's funny. Like I interviewed a gentleman. It'll be coming out soon. His name is Mr. Steve Sims, and he's like in 7-8 figure earner. And what I did is because I try, if I have a person on the podcast, I'll go deep into their past. I'll actually talk to people that they've served with. I mean, I'll go deep, deep. And what happened was I listened to all the interviews that he's done, and there's like hundreds of them. I listened to almost all of them. And I didn't touch on any question that anybody else ever asked him. My first question was, what was it like being a 16-year-old kid being a bricklayer, and having your first girlfriend at the age of 16 that she's your wife today? And it blew him out of the water. He's like, how did you know that? Nobody ever asked me that question. So I'm the kind of guy that's going to ask you questions that you're not used to getting asked, because everybody's asked them already.
yeah,
I want to be different. I want to be, so when people walk out of there, they'll be like, I never knew that about JR, but I really love that about him.
yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I have decided, for this at least, is not to try to script anything. I want the show to go where it's going to go, and even if I have like, something in mind, because I know you fairly well now, from our interview and just our interaction, seems like daily our interaction, and then watching your other shows, I had all kinds of stuff floating around in my head. But if I try to force that, if I try to say, okay, Richard, we're going to talk about this, it doesn't always, I just I don't want to put anyone in that situation, for one. And second is it just may not work. Whatever dynamic we have today could be different tomorrow.
Well, I believe, like, everybody that I've had on my show so far, I always tell them ahead of time, listen, we're going to be friends after this. I'm going to follow you on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. You're going to see me everywhere on your pages, because now I want to build a relationship. You being on the podcast is just the beginning of the relationship. Everything for me is about building relationships and trust.
Absolutely, man. That is so true. Because I know that once I came on your show, you and I have since, interacted a whole lot more than we did before.
Yeah, and it's all by plan. It's not by accident.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you what, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I know that you plug Third Day Coffee Seguin all the time. I see your photos on your personal page and on your
Instagram. Well, you know what it is, because you really touched my heart when you sent me that written letter. I didn't even care about the coffee. I didn't care about the pennies, the 2 pennies that you sent. It was the written letter that made the whole difference to me.
Yeah, it's funny because somebody recently asked me, what are you going to do when it gets too big to do that? And I go, I'm going to make time. I'm going to hire somebody to do the bagging and the packing and the shipping, and I'm going to still write a letter. I'm still going to say something to that person that is personal, and I'm still going to sign every one of them because that's what's gotten me where I'm at. And I believe that that's part of building a relationship. You
Mhm.
know, yes, I want people to buy my coffee. Do I think my coffee's better than most? Yeah, I do. It's different. It's definitely unique. And I've sent free samples to a lot of people um, who have given me positive feedback. But I think if you lose that personal touch, then it becomes, hey, Richard, I don't really care to talk to you. Just click on my website, buy my coffee, send me your money, and we'll be done with it. And so I think when you take the personal touch away, that's what happens.
And like there's a friend of ours. He's in one of our groups. I'm not going to mention his name because that's not the way I am. He was having a hard time in home with the wife and stuff like that. And I just reached out and I said, "Hey, bro, how are you doing?" He's like, "Yeah, I haven't sent your product to you." I said, "That's not what I asked. I asked how your family's doing because, you know, family first, business is last. You know, and it's great when you can just like my DMs are crazy because I'm always, "Hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How's the family? How's your wife? How are the kids?" It makes a difference the way people see you when they know who your family is, who your kids are. That relationship means everything, especially in the world of social media, people being unsocial in social media.
Yeah, that's a no doubt, man. And people get so wound up with all the stuff that's going on in politics, in the world, everything else that they forget some basic common courtesy and some basic ideas that you know all that stuff can come and go, but what remains is the relationships that you build with people, your family, and your family. You and I both know isn't always blood. Um, I'm closer to some of my military brothers than I've ever been to some of my cousins. And that's not because I'm not trying or whatever. It's just the nature you know of how things are.
I mean, like it's amazing. Like I forget what was it about a month or two ago. My daughter. Oh yeah. By the way, thank you for buying Girl Scout cookies. Appreciate that. My daughter loves that. But when I put out that my daughter was selling cake, I mean candy and stuff, it's like my veteran brothers. She like hit her goal within like 4 hours. I was like, wow, how incredible is that? And there are people from like all over the country. It's amazing.
Well, and that's a reflection on the way you treat people, Richard. It is.
I try, I just try to be the light in the darkness. That's why years ago I used to post all kind of political stuff. It's like, you know what? If you post a political thing on your Facebook page, either way, you're gonna piss off 50% of the people. So just don't do it. Like
Yeah.
a friend of ours got banned for doing something for something about the NRA on his page, and Facebook started banning him. I'm like, just don't post stuff anymore. Just got to be, if you can't talk about it in church, then don't talk about it on social media.
Yeah. And I don't I'm not going to badmouth the media that we use every day for business.
Yeah.
Uh, I look at one point Facebook was a personal page for me. It was a personal, you know, do I still post personal things? Yes, I do. But it's a platform for me to get my message out that God is first. God should always be first. And I got the best coffee this side of heaven. And to me, that's all that really needs to go up on social media. And I was one of those too, Richard. I was one of those, man. I used to post all this stuff and piss everybody off. And my wife, I think, said it best when it finally sunk in. She said, the funny thing about your opinion, nobody cares about it but you.
Mhm.
And she's right.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about my opinion. I do because it's my opinion, right? But nobody else cares. So,
Nope. That's why I try to stay away from it as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, you have to,
Every day
especially.
I still put a scripture every morning on my page. But other than that, I have no problem talking about God at all. But for as
Yeah.
far as the other crap, arguing and stuff, not doing it.
The funny thing is, I have never once been censored for posting a scripture or posting a positive word of encouragement about God. Not one single time. I've never got any emails. I've never got any, you're in jail, nothing. So there's a lesson there too, stop being negative, stop being polarized, and love each other the way God intended us to love one another.
Amen.
So let me ask you: is there anything that you would like to say to people as far as your show goes?
If
Is
you guys want,
richkaufman.net the only place we can catch it?
no, it's on Google, it's on Alexa, it's on Amazon, it's on iHeartRadio. I'm having problems getting it on Apple. I don't know why, but the show is called Success Your Why Powers Your How, and I got about almost 200 episodes in right now. But if you guys want to hop on, let me know. We'll talk about it. Don't need no schedule links. Just message me. I'm simple like that. Um, but yeah, if you want to check it out, um, I have a guy that just yesterday we put his episode out. He was talking about physical fitness and getting in health, getting healthy, and talking about some supplements you can take to help with COVID-19, so you don't get it. So there's something for everybody on the podcast. It's not just veterans, but if you're a business owner, you definitely want to check it out because we talk a lot about business, what to do and what not to do, especially on social media.
Yeah, and that's really sound advice, especially today. You have to be really careful. There's a lot of landmines that you can step on easily, and
Well, not that, there's like, if I friend request you, you should not be seeing 2 seconds later, hey, buddy, you want to buy my product? You're like, bro, it's like, it's like you're trying to marry me before you even date me. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And
no, I totally agree.
so, and there's a ways to being social and there's ways to being unsocial. And by the way, if anybody wants me to have me on their show, I'll go on anybody's show anytime.
Well, I got to tell you, man, I so appreciate you and I could talk for hours and hours here, and people would go to sleep on us. But uh, I just want to thank you so much. I encourage, man, anybody who you know who does podcasts, who wants to be, has a story that they'd like to tell. Uh, get a hold of richardkaufman.net. You
By
can
the way,
have the
Clubhouse,
coach.
I'm rocking it on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
The
So
company coach.
if you're not on Clubhouse, uh, I went out and I'm not kidding. I went out and bought an iPhone for the sole purpose of getting on Clubhouse. And
Yeah, Clubhouse is just like when Facebook was just beginning. So you want to hop on the train before it leaves the station.
yeah, and I really, I've heard, and we'll never know until they do it, but I've heard that Apple's gonna, try to make a play in that market, this particular market that we're on. We won't say it by name, but if that's the case, then this may be the vehicle that gets you there. And so you're right. It's ground floor stuff.
Yeah, and like I just started on TikTok because once I read that stat about there's so many people committing suicide between the ages of 8 to 19. Getting on that platform and letting things be known. And unfortunately, if we're business people, like Gary Vee says, you got to be where the attention is. And right now, TikTok and Clubhouse is where the attention's at.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with Clubhouse, it's all audio. It's not like Facebook. People aren't going to be pinging you with.
Yeah, there's no direct messaging. There's no emailing. You're not going to get any spam. So
Right.
yeah,
And I've sat in on a couple of rooms already where you got some big heavy hitters like Gary Vee, like Grant Cardone, like you know uh, in our world, Steve Kuhn. These people are titans in their industry, and they're giving away knowledge.
And they're going all in.
Yeah,
Grant Cardone is all in on
yeah,
coffee. So him and Gary and Steven, if they're going all in, there's something to it.
exactly right. And so these are guys who have made. I think he's a billionaire now, isn't he? He's in the
Yeah.
billions. And so for him to think that, in fact, I heard him speak today, and just listening to him, shoot a few words out is motivating. You're like, yeah, I'm going to get after this. And so if you've got an Apple device and it is by invite only. Just like I remember years ago, Gmail, you had to be. It was when it was in beta, you had to have an invite. Well, Clubhouse is the same way. You have to have an invite. If you're in the zone of action, uh, Justin Charpentier is helping everybody make sure that everybody who wants one or needs one gets one.
And you have to have an Apple device for right now.
You have to have an iPhone, actually, and it has to be an iPhone 6 or better, because you have to be able to have iOS 13.1 or better in order to load the program. That's how I found out, because I have some old iPhones and they didn't work. And so I had to get a newer iPhone. I ended up getting a 7. And I downloaded the app, and I'm loving it so far. But it can be a time suck, man. You got to have some wireless earbuds so you can put your earbuds in and walk away and keep doing what you were doing. So today,
you got to be disciplined, because it does become addicted.
Yeah, I was roasting coffee, and while I roast coffee, I usually go through my phone. And today, I was able to listen to some of the rooms and the discussions that were going on. So, again, brother, I can't thank you enough, man. I love you. I really appreciate you coming on. I have a lot of respect for you. I got the idea of doing what I'm doing from watching you. And so I look at you as a mentor in that respect. And we're brothers in Christ. We both wore the uniform, and we're out to help our veteran community any way that we can.
And guys, if you love coffee, that's the man. No, that's the man. That's the man. That's the man. He makes some amazing coffee. I mean, when you open that package, that just like, oof, you get the aroma. It just attacks you. So if you love good, strong, tasty coffee, thirdcoffeeseguin.com.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It's funny. The mailman the other day asked me, "Do you live right here?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "You're the guy with the coffee." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm the guy with the coffee." He's like, "Man, every time I go by your mailbox and I pull out those packages when you're sending them off, man, I just want to like tear one open."
Did you give him one?
I said, "Don't do that. I'll give you some coffee."
There you go. Maybe you'll get your packages a little bit quicker.
Right. Well, listen, folks, I appreciate you tuning in tonight. This is episode 7. It's in the books, God Country Coffee. I had the extreme pleasure of interviewing my brother, my friend, Richard Kaufman, the comeback coach. Today I decide, look for the veteran. You'll see on all our social media, mine and his, and Ryan Hunt's, Pando Media, everybody that's in our little clique, our groups, you'll see us pushing the veteran healthcare social summit that's coming in April, correct?
Yep. And it's free all the time, and it's going to be virtual, so you don't have to worry about missing it.
Outstanding. Again, I always tell you that I start with God, I end with God. Thank you, God, for everything that you've done for both of us, for everything that you're doing in our lives. I pray for our country. I pray for everyone who's been affected by this pandemic. I pray for believers and non-believers alike. People treat one another the way God intended us to treat one another, with love and respect. Pray for one another. Do all these things. Come back and see us next week for episode 8. And until then, I pray that God bless you beyond measure. Until then, God bless. Hang tight for a second, Richard, okay?
Yep.
See you next week on God Country Coffee. Love y'all. God bless. Goodbye.